Talk about the solution as far as capitalism is concerned. And now, many Africans or international citizens in the world depend on money. Cannot do anything without money. Is there any solution to eliminate money?
Yes, in fact, there are many, not just one. I have proposed quite a number of them, and some of them are already done by many of your own African countries, but they are not very successful, but at least they use some big progress. Let me give you one example about money. As you know, Africa has been ignored for a long time now by the European colonial powers. You will remember the European colonization in Africa, and all those European powers had come and control you. They have military bases, they enslave you, they do not pay any of those products, they control your regime, and they have all kinds of arrangements so that you cannot do this. Even the money that you used to use also belong to European currency, and that's why in Western Africa some of them are still using French francs, by the way. Why? Well, that's because of the European currency. So they control you in major aspects. Now things have been changing in the last 2 decades or so because of China. Number one is infrastructure. In any economic takeoff, unless you have good infrastructure, that's very important. Your economy cannot take off for a long time. And China, if you look in the last 10 years or 15 years, all the new, not the old, all the new schools, clinics, ports, stadium, airports, you name it, the chances all of them are built by China. Okay, many of them. Now, you ask about money. Where does all this money come from? All this costs a lot of money. I don't have the most recent example, but the last number that I saw was like more than $1 trillion that China has already invested in Africa for you. Now, where do you get the money? Now, it comes in different forms. One is you borrow money from China, but in many cases, you probably know already, you do not pay at all. In many of those cases, all the debts have never been paid back to China. The African countries will say, China, we don't have money to pay back, can you reschedule or cancel? And China in many cases cancel those debts. That's one way to do it, and that's why why do you think all these things have been going on, but many African countries, as you know, have no money to pay? But how can? Well, that's because of the help of China, and foreign aid is another one. Now, the third solution is trade. Here you have diamonds in Sierra Leone. Nigeria have oil. So different countries have different resources. So what happens is that you export whatever you export, oil, diamond, whatever, and they pay you. Okay, that's trade. Okay, just like you go to a supermarket, you buy a Coca-Cola, I don't know, and then you pay. Okay, right? They give you something, you give something back to them. So you earn that money. Now the problem is, where do all those money go? Look at Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest oil producer in Africa. It's one of the major oil producers in the world, and Nigeria earns so much money each year. If Nigeria were to spend all this money in all these years of production, Nigeria could be very wealthy now for its own people, but Nigeria is one of the worst rates of poverty in Africa. So the money go to where? You know what I'm talking about, corruption. Okay, the same thing about Sierra Leone, there's also a lot of corruption too over here. So you talk about money, yes, they have a lot of ways that you can do to take money, but except that you have to do that correctly. And but by the way, things are picking up in Africa because of China. So things are changing fast, and that's why if you look at the African mass media, on the whole, they are much more pro-China than Western mass media. You go to the US, you go to Western Europe, you look at all this mass media, they demonize China on a daily basis. In Africa, people say so much good things about China, even people on the street.
Okay.
Dr.
Peter, let's look at this other way now, as far as your solutions, vision is concerned in global, now in African context. What have you been doing for the leaders or governments to accept this your vision and implement it? On the contrary as well, many Africans listening now to you will say, oh, no, the doctor is here to convince us or bring in the same colonial ideology, because the West came with the religion. They use the religion to mislead our people, especially in Africa. What do you have to say about that?
There are a lot of things. In fact, I have been on TV many times in Africa. People ask me this kind of question. There are several things that you can do and your government can do. Let's start with different angles of observation. First, beginning with what you said about colonization. One thing that you need to do is that money is not everything. You also need to look into non-monetary issues. Dignity, for example. There are a lot of things going on which have put you in a situation that you have inferiority complex toward the colonial powers. So you need to engage in a decolonization process. Many African countries become independent, but they are still enslaved. You may have your country back, you have a political sovereignty. By the way, in many cases you are still controlled by the colonial powers. But you need to engage in a cultural decolonization. Means that you have to get rid of all those garbages that they have put on you. Look, we are speaking English over here. How come English is the official language here? And also French, by the way, in Central Africa and Western Africa is the official language. Look at religion. You have Christian religion, you have Islam. Why? How come that Germany or the UK did not adopt an African religion to become their religion, but you worship a white god, Jesus Christ as your god, or Mohammed as your god for Islam? How come they do not accept your African god? Think about it. That is not a trivial question. That is a real question for you to understand the asymmetry. What colonization has happened to you? You are still enslaved in many ways. Your currency in Central Africa, Western Africa, they are still using francs, but now they are using eco. They have a new currency coming up, but they're still controlled by the EU. So whatever you do, you have not been. Look at the education that you have. I went to many schools and I saw many textbooks. All of them are Western textbooks. And if you read them, many of them, they often portray the West as in a very nice way, but they never talk much about the things that we have been talking about. And those textbooks don't like to talk about this. So it's that you are enslaved in multiple ways, but you only have independence, but that's only on paper. In reality, your mindset is not yet African. And that's why in Africa now, you see a quite number of people, they have been talking about the African Renaissance, Pan-Africanism. They have been doing that, by the way, for several decades. They have been talking about it. Maybe I should emphasize that they keep talking. No end of talking. But doing, on the other hand, is not much going on. It's not because what I say is new. No, I'm sure that many of you probably heard about this. But doing it, that is the one of the solutions that I propose that you should start doing it is not keep talking about it. I have watched so many videos, have talking to so many people. They keep talking to me about it. About
Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. So and talk about the governance and many of the African countries. The problem is that many of the leaders do not want to leave. And many of them pursue a kind of political nepotism, political tribalism. They come in, they always favor their own group at the expense of the alternative, whatever is the opposition, the opposite tribes, the opposite regions, whatever. And they keep fighting with each other and for that. And as long as you have this kind of political division, by the way, much of that is also because of the colonial legacy to the Africa. They carve out all these kind of different countries, different regions, and that doesn't make much of any historical sense, except for the colonial political control. I, on the French side, I want to control this. You, on the British side, you want to control that one. So we divide this. I control this, you control that. But this has nothing to do with the local people, and they don't care about you. And you are still living in the legacy.
All right, that sounds good. With all these visions, your potential solutions as far as global dynamics is concerned, let's talk about sustainable development.
Okay.
One of it's the issues about youth empowerment, because in Sierra Leone, in Africa, youth are going a lot of challenges, through a lot of challenges, And you also talk about, okay, the issue of youth employment. Do you have any solution to it?
Okay. Yes, I was also interviewed on TV about young people. They also asked me the same question about what can young people like you do for your own country. I see a lot of opportunities, but also I see a lot of problems. Let me talk about the opportunity first. One good thing I do like about the young people in Africa is because some of them they now they have the opportunity. They don't travel too much, but at least they look out. They watch the internet. They visit the neighboring countries, especially for guys. Sometimes they migrate. They find different jobs in different countries. Sometimes it's not safe for women to do that, but guys can just flee to the border, to go to the jungle, to do this. So they see a lot of things, and when they come back, and they do not want to live the same old life again because they have seen so much outside. And when they come back in, they say, no, we have to change it. We have to change that. They have this motivation. Before, no one went out and they don't see too much. The older generation never left. So now that is what the good thing about the new generation. I spoke to many of them, and many of them are quite receptive to what I'm saying, but the older folks do not quite listen to me. But it's very understandable. Young people tend to be much more listening, much more willing to change. Okay, that is a good thing. The bad thing, on the other hand, is that contrary to what you may be thinking, many of them end up being the colonial agent for Western powers again. Okay. Because they like to visit the UK, they go to Paris, they go to France, they go to Germany, they go to the US, they go to wherever you go, and they saw this and saw this and this and say, oh, that's nice. So when they come back and say, why should we just copy London? We copy Paris, we copy New York. People in New York do that, we should do that too in Paris. So over time, you come back in, you are trying to reintroduce the colonial legacy again, but this time in a new form. You want your country to be like them. But what is the point to have independence? You have been fighting all these decades for colonial independence, but the younger generation, the risk is that they end up coming back and ask you to be just like the former colonial powers. So when you start thinking like this, the chances you become much more receptive to ask the former colonial powers to come back and help you to do things so that you can be like them again. But that is not helping you, because the colonial powers, they don't care about you. They care about their own national interest. If they come here and help you, just like Trump, what will you benefit him before you want him to come back and do A, B, C, and D for you, like the USAID? Yeah. So you said that you have been receiving all this aid. He said he want to cut it off. So now give me this too, and Trump will ask you, so what are you going to give me? Look, I give you one example, not to scare the hell out of you. Look at Ukraine. Okay. Ukraine has been receiving weapons from the US. Do you know that, in the war against Russia? Now, the US has given them so much money and weapon intelligence sharing. Do you remember the conversation that Trump has with Zelensky?
Yes.
Trump said, you owe me $500 billion. And Zelensky said, what? I thought that you give us for free. I said, hell no, it's not free. You owe us. So if you do not pay back, then we have to take control of the minerals in Ukraine. We are going to occupy some of the territory in Ukraine. We are going to hold it. And that belongs to the US. Now, how about that? So you want money, right? Okay, fine. So remember, those money is not free. Even if you give you for free, think about twice. And next time Trump will come back to you and say, yeah, hey, you Africa, you owe me $5 trillion. Given what I have done for you, you have no cause. You have to listen to me. If you don't do it, we are going to take it. So what are you going to do? So before you talk about money, think twice about. So those young people, when they come back, sometimes they become very innocent. They are very naive because they are not that old yet. They are not mellow. They are not wise. So they end up become so westernized. They come back here. They spreading the messages for Western powers. They become the new agents, another colonial intrusion. And this time with the young people, not with the old people. So the young people, that you have the kind of naivety and innocence that can be the risk. But on the other hand, they can also do a lot of good things for Africa too.
Okay, I'm still with you on your vision and potential solutions as far as global issues is concerned. Let's talk about some of the testimony or some of the results you have gained so far as far as your ideology is concerned, going around this country. Is there any feedback or people in particular country have been practicing some of your ideology?
I have not had time to, and by the way, I have been doing this only in the last several years, and for my entire life I have not done any of this. The reason I start doing this now because I am almost near the end of my intellectual career, because I have 180 books. I cannot even mention the articles that I have published, but that is much beyond everything that I have ever expected. So I'm thinking that it's also time for me to implement my visions instead of writing more, because people get tired already. Wow, 180, I listened to only 3, but you had another 147. I mean, people getting tired and say, we don't have time to listen. So I'm thinking to engage more in practice and trying to help people in different communities to spread the message and to help them, and so I start doing that. So I have not been doing this for a long time, but I have seen some progress already, because I have received a lot of invitations, and over time, many people in Africa, not just in Africa but also elsewhere, this person, that person asked me, okay, do you mind to come here and do this for us, or do you mind come here and to be the chair of this kind of think tank? Oh, do you mind to come here to this school and teach for one semester and tell us about, I mean, different people have reached out to me and asked me, can we do this? So yes, I'm seeing some progresses, but many of my visions are still very new.
Okay.
But I'm sure that many of you probably have not heard about this kind of vision before. So it takes time in human history for you to implement anything. It's not like you write a book today and then tomorrow everyone is listening to you and doing that. It doesn't work like this. So yes, so the answer is yes, but you have to be much more patient.
Okay.
So I see a lot of good things, but I also see a lot of bad things, like the one that I told you about the young people. So things are still very bad in Africa, but I still think that things are picking up. Just as I mentioned about China in this example. Okay,
so let's talk about the repercussion now. China going away from America and other countries. We expect the Third World War, because coming back or America reacting, what should that look like?
Yes, there is a risk, but I do not worry about that too much, because Trump is not stupid. Trump is a very smart man. Okay, whether you like him or do not like him, Trump understands very well that in a nuclear war there's no winner. Okay, it doesn't matter even if China drops 100 nuclear bombs. Is that enough? I mean, how many nuclear bombs do they need to drop at you to kill you? I mean, 5 is already too much. Why do you even need 100, let alone 1,000? So they know, I mean, those nuclear powers, they know that there's a no-go zone to even implement. Then of course they can talk tough to, I mean, this propaganda, by the way, politicians are very good in making propaganda. Do you understand me? Politicians, everywhere you go, they are very good in talking in front of their own people. They often lie, they spread all this kind of rumors, this kind of thing to make themselves look good for their own political purposes. Politicians do that on a daily basis. They lie about everything. Okay? But deep in their head, they know about this. So I don't worry about Trump and Xi are going to fight. So that is out of the question now. It's not quite correct to say that China is going to stop trading with the U.S. They still trade. There's still a lot of trade. But I'm just saying that in terms of the percentage, the U.S. will no longer be so important to China as it was, let's say, 30 years ago or 20 years ago. And also the U.S. trade with the rest of the world will no longer be so important as it was, let's say, 50 years ago or 40 years ago. In other words, the U.S. is declining fast. But the U.S. is not out of the picture. The U.S. is still a very important power. But when I talk about China and India become the dominant, I'm talking about, let's say, 50 years or 100 years. I'm not talking about tomorrow morning. I'm not talking about even 5 years from now.
Okay.
So you have to look things into the different perspective. But I do think that if you look at the percentage, and you will see that by the time Trump finishes the second term, and you will see that the U.S. relation with the rest of the world become less and less and less and less and less. The U.S. is losing a lot of power because the U.S. is no longer in control. The U.S. is broken right now. Do you understand that? Why do you think the U.S. engage in all this kind of tariff? Why do you, even right now at this moment that I'm speaking, Trump and his political party and Congress have been negotiating for a new ceiling to increase the debt. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
This has been going on for years after year. Each time they increase, first they say the ceiling, no more debt after $20 trillion. And then, okay, $22 trillion, no more. And then 25, and then 30. Now they talk about $40 trillion, no more. I tell you now.
Okay.
If they had 40 trillion, they will ask for maybe 45, and then 50. Why do they keep increasing that debt? Because they have no money to pay. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
When you have no money to pay, that means that you have to keep borrowing because you have to pay interest too. So you have to borrow more money. But this is going to happen sooner or later. In fact, there's a faster way for them to even destroy themselves. That is because Trump is doing something more than all the previous politicians had ever done. Trump is really destroying American dollar as the status of the international currency, of the international reserve currency. What Trump is doing is really destroying. Just look at how the American dollar, the value, the index has been declining so fast in the last few weeks.
Okay.
This is not accidental. In fact, this has been happening sooner or later anyway. For many years, I have been on TV like this many times previously. I said that deglobalization and de-dollarization will be the two major features of the second Cold War between the US and China, and it's happening now. De-dollarization, do you understand what that is? De-dollarization means that the American dollar will no longer be the dominant, reliable, safe haven for the rest of the world. More and more people now will get away from it. But it will not happen overnight, slowly. But it's happening continuously.
Okay, do you believe that Africa is a safe haven as far as the world is concerned? Because many scholars have been saying Africa have the resources, they are the bread baskets for the West as well. Do you believe in that?
No, I understand some of those people because some of those people are also, I know them personally. They are well-known professors at Harvard, at MIT, at many other schools. So the answer is no. Africa is certainly not a safe haven at all.
Okay. Not
at all. But it doesn't mean that every single African country is not safe. Some countries nowadays are a bit better. Look at Rwanda. Rwanda is doing a bit better than some of the neighboring countries. But even then, yes, there are some international investors. They try to invest in Rwanda right now. But even then, you still have a lot of problems. In fact, Rwanda now is in political crisis. Let's say with the neighboring country, Congo.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, the genocide is over, but the legacy of the genocide, the political division, the ethnic conflict, has not yet resolved.
Okay.
They put everything under the carpet. Pope, what's the name again? Pope Kagame. Yeah. He becomes so authoritarian. By the way, I was also in Rwanda many times. I was also on TV too. So don't think that I've never been there. I was there. I was also on TV too. and he becomes so authoritarian that he's not really resolving some of the most important ethnic divisions in Rwanda. He only suppressed everything, so no one is allowed to have an ethnic identity. But when I interview people, a lot of people were not very happy about it. And inside a room, in a private room, people can yell and shout at me and tell me that they are so angry about this, that their tribe is being maltreated. But in public, no one care talk about this, because in Rwanda now, you speak up about this, you could disappear very quickly. So the political bomb is still there. It's waiting to explode anytime soon.
Wow.
And also the problem with Congo is another problem now. They are trying to reach an agreement, but I think that kind of problem will continue. This has been going on for many years now, by the way. I don't think that it's happening only last night or last month.
Okay.
This has been going on for many years already.
Okay.
Yes, okay. We still move ahead. Wherever you are, wherever you listen, you're listening to Culture Radio FM 104.5, and you're listening to Weatin Dae Monah U, and that is in our local dialect, Creole. And in English, it's What is Bothering You? In our edition today, we have a special guest from the United States of America, Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, an author who is here to talk about so many issues around humanity. Now, let's talk about humanity. We spoke about Africa, youth living in Africa for greener pasture, and currently in the United States of America, Germany, the EU, we're seeing a lot of deportation of Africans. What do you have to say about that?
This is going to be this problem is not going to disappear. Let me tell you why. I'm not going to make binary judgment because the two sides are very divided. Okay, so I don't take side with either side. I spoke about this in other TV interviews before, but the African mass media may be a bit afraid for me to speak out. There is a major problem in Africa right now, and that problem is overpopulation. I think that Africa has not yet come to terms with this problem, and this problem is getting more and more serious. There are simply too many people in Africa. There's an overpopulation. You have a demographic explosion in Africa. At the end of the century, the majority of the population on Earth, a lot of them will be from Africa. I don't know the latest number. The last one that I saw is that the black population in Africa alone is already, I think, larger than the population of China. But they are, the demographic growth rate in Africa is increasing so fast, but the population growth rate in China is declining. It's not even producing enough babies to sustain the population.
Because they have policy on...
So that is a major problem for Africa. Why? Let me tell you why. Because normally, this now is about demographic economics. Normally, when you have a cheap labor, that means that you have a lot of population. That means that many of your people cannot find work, so they are willing to work for a very low rate. That's why China has been using their overpopulation. That's why they engage in population control some years ago, because they understood that the population was just increasing so fast that they had to control the population. So what they did, and what Africa can learn too, is that that's why China was able to take advantage of the demographic dividend. I'm not sure if you understand that term. That means that it's not necessarily bad to have a big population, because even if they are unemployed, but you can use them to do work, and you pay them a low rate, and that make your products more competitive. That's how China will slowly become more and more developed. They sell a lot of things to you. They are very, very cheap. They did not earn much of anything, and they live in a very poor situation. Fine, they sacrifice, they plan. They know that maybe after a few years, a few decades, China will become much more prosperous, the people will live much better. So they have a strategy. The government plan ahead for this. So they implement that slowly, very strategically. Now, the problem here is that Africa is coming too late. Now we have the AI, the robotic revolution. People used to say that India is going to become the next manufacturing hub. I'm not sure how far, but the problem is that even if this were going to happen, I doubt very much that Africa will be the next manufacturing hub. Do you know why? Because of AI and the robotic revolution. In the future, this is happening in China right now. China now is leading, let me repeat one more time, is leading the robotic revolution. There are more robots introduced to Chinese factories now in China, more than anywhere on earth, including the US. The US now has no competition at all, cannot fight in that war. So why does China do that? Because China have a declining population. So one way, they have many other ways. One way for them to fix that problem is that robot now everywhere is doing the work. Nowadays, do you pay attention to the news? Now, a lot of delivery, food delivery, cargo delivery, it's not by driver anymore, by drones. They are driverless drones, okay? And now they have a taxi, driverless taxi, flying taxi. They are operating in China right now. Do you know that? It sounds like science fiction to you. They are leading the revolution. Factories in China, many of them now become more and more automatic. Do you understand? You go to the factory, you don't see much of many, you don't see too many workers. Everything is automatic, robotic. Do you understand that? So when Africa has so much population, by the end of the century, there are more black people on earth than any other races. Now think about the consequences. Do you still have the demographic dividend? My guess is no, because they don't need you anymore. Because the robotic revolution is taken over. I am making another prediction, 150 theory. One of them is what I call post-humanity, which means that humans, as we understand them, black people, Asian people, white people, they will not survive anymore.
Okay.
In the coming future, there will be more and more what I call post-humans. Humans will become extinct. AI, by the way, it goes through different stages, in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term. But in the short term, now you have AI, you have robots, but there will be more and more. So in the future, by the end of the century, you will see, when you go to the factory, you don't see too many workers anymore. Everything is robotized. And people serving you. In China, by the way, in some of the hotels, you don't see many of those people serving you. Now they are robots. Okay, you buy things from them. The robots are serving you. In China nowadays, by the way, it's science fiction. Even in America, you don't see that. China now is leading. That's why you said China now is ahead of the US, ahead of the West in many ways. That's why you asked me a very innocent question, because I'm sure that you have never been in China. That's why you don't know, you listen to too much Western mass media. You have to go there and see what's going on. The world has changed so much that the Western mass media is still sleeping. And this is problem for Africa, because by the time you wake up, you will see that Africa has so many people, but then they cannot find work, and they don't need you anymore to produce cheap labor. Why? Because the robots will do everything. They don't need you. So they will still need you, but I'm just saying that many of you will still become unemployed. Even if you take advantage, even if you copy China, you will not become the next China. Why? Because that race is gone. The new technology is take over. So what happens? Some of them will go to Europe or go to China, or they will spread out, many of these black people, to find work. In fact, you go to China, you go to Guangzhou, you will see they have the Little Africa. That means that in China right now, they have some neighborhood where many of the people that are blacks, where they come from? They come from Africa. So it's not just a question for the EU, it's also a problem now for China. China now it has to cope with the reality that do they really want all these kind of African immigrants coming to China, just as Italy, France, Germany has been talking for many decades now. So I tell you now, this problem will continue for a long time. Why? Because Africa is overpopulated. You don't know how many people that you have now. You look, you walk on the street, there are babies, there are young children, kids playing everywhere. You go to Russia, you go to some of the Scandinavian countries, you don't see many kids at all because the population are declining. You don't see many young people. You go to Italy, some of the town and the villages there are just old people. But in Africa, everywhere you go, the babies are everywhere. You don't even know how overpopulated. You are eating up all the resources that you have in Africa in order to forget about economic development. You are eating up the resources that you need to develop. That's why China is carrying out the population control, because they were smart. They realized that China cannot become the superpower. China cannot be rich. China cannot be developed if they do not stop this overpopulation. And they did. But then, of course, now they realize that they went too far. But now they try to reproduce some solution. Now they encourage people to have more children. Isn't that amazing? The one-child population policy is gone. Now the Chinese government is encouraging women, Chinese women, produce more babies for your own country. Isn't that amazing? 10 years ago, they keep asking they cannot have more than one child, or 20 years ago. Now they even give them so many incentives. Okay. Produce more babies, please.
Yeah, Doc, I don't think that should be a problem, especially for Africa, because we are used to, that's a part of our tradition. But let's talk now about Sierra Leone.
By the way, I don't question your tradition. I'm just saying that you will pay the price, and the price is that you will remain poor until you cope with that demographic transition. It's not just your problem. Every country on earth goes through this kind of demographic transition. You are not the first one. You will not be the last in the future. There will be some other people, but I'm just saying the different countries resolve their problem successfully. Some other don't, but if you don't, then you will remain poor. But I don't question your tradition.
Okay, so what's your take so far about our president here in Sierra Leone in terms of his leadership style, potential approach in terms of major challenges? Because as we are speaking now, we have no light. There's no light. There's no 24-hour light. We want to go solar generators. Cost a lot.
Yeah.
What do you think about the president of Sierra Leone and the governor? Because now they are talking about new direction.
Yeah. I will have two answers. The first one is diplomatic. The second one is a bit more realistic. The first one is diplomatic is because I don't like to go to a foreign country, because I have been on TV so many times. I'm very experienced on how to talk on TV, and I know that it's not good for me to criticize a government on TV.
Okay,
even though I'm an American, but I prefer not to attack people personally. Because I am an academic, I'm a scholar, I'm a thinker. So when I criticize to make things better, not to make things worse, and I don't attack a person. I will talk about the policy, I talk about the consequences of the economic, whatever, political problems. So then I will not talk about government and all that. I will not attack either way. I want to stay out of it.
Okay.
Now, but I want to answer your question indirectly. Okay, without attacking any person. I talk about the policy only. Now, you are right. In fact, two major problems which come to my mind very, very fast. Not even the first hour. Within less than an hour of my arrival at the airport. I don't even need to stay here for 5 years to know it. In less than an hour, I saw two problems already.
Okay.
Number one is corruption.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to attack anyone. Some of the security, they ask me for money. Okay, now I'm not going to attack anyone personally. I'm talking about the policy. The second one is about the electricity problem. Okay, so I'm very sympathetic to you. And once I walk in to the city, I can see that everywhere you go, the electricity never stay for a long time before it was being cut off again. Okay, it lasts maybe, it depends if you stay in some nice hotel, maybe stay a bit longer, but even in nice hotels, there are some disruption too, but if you go to some bad neighborhoods, that is like you are suffering every day. I also noticed that you are lucky to be in Freetown. Wait, and you go to the villages, there's almost no electricity at all. Okay, people use solar panels and all that. So yes, in that sense, you have, and also as I travel around, I take the transportation, and I notice that in many corners, you have police check or security check or something like that. Yeah. And those people often ask for money. They always give you some excuses. Okay, they ask for more, and you negotiate, and they take whatever you give them. Now, these two problems, I don't need to stay here for 10 years to notice. I learned it so quickly.
And now we are in 64 years as a country. We still have the problem of corruption.
So on the question about electricity, I want to give you some inspiration, because you are not the only country on earth which has that problem. Many other countries, I have been in more than 160 countries already. There are not too many countries that I have never been in, and I noticed that, let's say your neighbor Gambia. Gambia some years ago also had this kind of problem, and I was there at that time, and it was also very bad. But now when I came back to visit one more time, and I noticed there's some major improvement. Okay, they do a lot of different things. For example, there are some of the solutions. Do you know that China nowadays is the leading provider of solar panels?
Yes.
Okay, hydropower, as wind panels.
Yeah.
Okay, China is the leading producer, and they are the cheapest too. Okay, so they are extremely competitive. Okay, many countries, even European countries, including Hungary, is asking China for help. So my question to you is, why should not China come in and help you? I noticed that they did that already to some extent. So many of the solar panels over here, many of them are made in China, for example. So that is a good solution, because Gambia have been doing that. That's why some of the solution now is working. So if you keep doing that, focus on renewable energy, solar panels, wind power, hydropower, for example, and that is a major improvement for you. But then you also have to cope with the question of the governance and corruption, because they go together. Because if the government does not take the lead to do this, then you have to do this by yourself. And another solution is that the neighborhood has to organize things together. In fact, I met some people, they told me that some of them have already started doing something like that for their own neighborhood. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people would get together, and some of them are businessmen, some of them have some money, and say, okay, maybe we can finance it together so that we can have some electricity for this street over here, for the 10 houses over here, not for the entire country, but the grassroots solution to that problem. So yes, in the case of governance, you don't need to depend totally on the national government. Even the local government, the local neighborhood can do something about it. Okay, technologically, you can go into solar panel, wind power, hydropower, and all that. Okay, so so economically, you can also rely on money issue, just as you have been doing that with China. You can try to borrow some money from them and ask them for aid. And China, by the way, in the last few decades, as I said before, have been giving you all these kind of loans and foreign aid in a way that other powers have not been giving to you for development, not for military bases, not for political control, not for weapons, so that you can fight. So this is more for economic development. So there's some solution to that, but you have to fix all of this. But it's easy to say, not easy to do.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Wherever you listen, you're still listening to Weatin Dae Monah U. That is what is bothering you, bringing out some burning issues. It's 9:45 exactly. 10 o'clock. We'll be saying goodbye to this edition. With us in the studio, we have Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, an academist. Is in our studio to highlight us about different original ideas and vision. Now let's come to China and Africa. China and Sierra Leone. The Western media, as you said, the Western media is saying so much about China, that China is a corrupt country. What do you have to say about that?
Think about this. Every time when someone says something which is propaganda, which is not true, the best way to counter that is to listen more carefully what they say. If China is so corrupt, as they said, why does China become so prosperous and so advanced now? Even America is so afraid of China. Look, if you are a very corrupt person, you cannot go very far in life, especially in economic development. Have you seen any economy on earth which is very corrupt, is so corrupt as you said, and yet it becomes the most advanced? If this were the truth, that corruption can lead you to prosperity, how come your African countries, many of them are so corrupt, have made you so poor? That means that what they say must be nonsensical. Think about it one more time. They say China is powerful now, is a threat, but they are very corrupt. Okay, fine. But if they are so corrupt, how come they are so good? Does it make sense to you? How come they become so prosperous? They are so good in making all these products, and they are leading now in many things. But they are so corrupt, as you said. But how come you could not do that too? Africa is also very corrupt, but how come you cannot like China? They are so corrupt, as you said. You are too. But how come you cannot like them? Well, the reason is something is wrong with that. It's nonsensical. You cannot be corrupt and become so progressive at the same time. So the best way for you to counter someone is not to argue with that person. Just listen carefully and say, your reasoning doesn't make any sense. And you ask the question.
All right. Thank you. Keep staying with us. Dr. Peter Baofu is in our studio from the United States of America. How big are you, Mohammed? What's your take about some of the idea we have been hearing from Doctor?
Yeah, it's good. And one of the things I was thinking about is for Culture Radio to implement some of this, your ideology, your solutions at community level, because we have the capacity, we have programs for the community, we engage them regularly, so we can use some of this, your books, your ideology, your solution to educate the masses about this ideology. I don't know what you think about it, but so far the discussion is educative. We appreciate it, and I think this is good for our country. I don't know if you have met before the president, or you have any
Ministry, department, agency,
to interface with them, share this kind of ideology.
Okay, two things over here. First about the books, and then about the VIPs. The books, I have written 180s, and I don't think that a lot of people will even have the time and the energy and to read all of them, and many of the books are very lengthy. But I do not mind to summarize some of the ideas, maybe in a shorter article or something like that, like interview like this is also good to summarize some of the ideas. By the way, if you were to read my books, you have to read a lot to even hear many of of these messages. So I have been summarizing a lot into a few ideas. So yes, so my answer to you is that, and if anyone would like to use my publication or my idea to make a presentation, I do not mind. Now let's go to number 2 about the VIPs. Am I interested, or do I mind if I talk to any people in government or in academia and things and about my solution to help them? Yeah, I'm open to that. I do not mind. And all they need to do is to get in touch with me and find out what is the solution or the proposal.
Yeah, because we have so many problems here in Africa and Sierra Leone. You know. But we do appreciate you, Doctor, and I'm so happy for the very first time to meet with you.
Yeah, because I'm a global thinker and I'm a visionary, and that's why I'm very interested in doing some contribution to humanity, and that's the whole passion which has driven me to do so much.
You said before you are now trying to fold up your academic or your professional career. Where do you want to settle? In Africa, in Asia?
No, I am thinking to start another career in politics. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that I'm going to retire. It's just that I have reached my goal already in terms of producing some ideas which can change history, that I fulfill my life goal, and I'm very glad that I did that. But I still have some time left in my life to do something else. So instead of retiring and go for vacation for life, I would like to spend the rest of my life to do another contribution. And this time I would like to make some practical contribution to improve communities or countries, whatever.
Do you intend to rule America or what in terms of?
No, I think that I start in the U.S. because that's my country. So I don't think that I have much of any opportunity elsewhere, because I'm not a national of another country. So it's much more realistic for me to start with the US. Hopefully, if someone come to know me in another country, maybe the person can ask me for help.
So now we are sitting in one of the future presidents of America or United States.
No, I don't look into politics like this.
Okay.
I think in terms of what I can do to make an impact, so that some of my visions can help to improve humanity. Whatever the political position that I'm going to hold is not as important as the actual contribution that I can do.
Alright, that's good.
Alright, we are about to say goodbye, but before we go, is this the first time coming to Sierra Leone?
Yes, it's my first time.
So are you going to come back?
I don't know, but people often ask me this question. By the way, if you ask me this question, let's say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and ask me if I ever come to Sierra Leone, I probably say Sierra Leone. I'm not sure. I don't even know where it is. But now I'm here. So if you ask me now when we will come back, I do not know.
But you enjoy the atmosphere.
Yeah, sure, because that's my passion, and that's my work to understand humanity. And every country that you go to, there are always something new for you to pick up and something interesting for you to pick up.
So your experience about Sierra Leone is the corruption and also the blackouts.
Yeah, no, that's only because you mentioned about the problems, but I can also talk about some of the things which are good too, but you did not ask that. But I spoke about that because you asked me about the improvement which need to be done to find a solution. So
okay. So what are some of the developments you are impressed about inside?
There are several things which I think is also very nice over here too. One is about the hospitality and the friendliness of the people, and also people like to are willing to share with the little that they have. If they can help, they help. This kind of spirit is very African to me, because you go to, let's say, in the US and some other countries where things are very capitalistic. You don't see too much like this unless you come to some small villages and small towns. In Africa, you see more like this. That I think is something for the West to learn from Africa. I think there is some compassion and humanity in Africa that Western mass media have not yet paid sufficient attention to. They only talk about the bad things, but they don't talk about the good things, that Africa can also humanize the West too.
So, what do you have to say? In relation to governance?
As I said before, I do think that the governance can be improved in different ways, and corruption is certainly one way to do it. And the other thing is about the political nepotism, political tribalism. That's also a very important thing to consider. You may look at that as another part of corruption too, because that kind of mindset is also corrupt, but it's like we just the cost and opportunity of any political governance. There are different types, but each type has its own drawbacks, but also has its own benefits.
Okay.
All right, I want to say thank you very much for coming to our studios.
Okay, thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And Mohammed, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc, and congratulations, and have a good stay in Sierra Leone.
Thank you.
Thank you, and back to our Studio One for music. Bye-bye for now.
Okay, thank you.